everyone. Thanks for stumbling upon my little channel here today. And we're here to do a review for you for the Sumerian Records release of Drift by the band Erra. Erra are a Birmingham, Alabama based metalcore band with some progressive influence. The best comparison I can think of is Periphery, or maybe even a more aggressive form of a band like Tesseract or The Contortionist. My first exposure to this project was actually their prior release called Augment. This album happened to be a complete impulse buy for me. I was in FYE searching for a particular album that they didn't actually have in stock that day, so I had an extra $20 in my pocket that I was looking to spend somewhere, so I just randomly started browsing for whatever caught my eye in the store. And I noticed the label for Erra, a band I had never heard of, never seen the name of or anything. And they actually happen to have 7 Augment albums in stock in the store, which caught my attention because normally a store like FYE doesn't carry 7 copies of one album for a particular metal band. Normally it's like 1 or 2, maybe 3. So I guess these guys had a pretty good following, and I don't know how I missed out on them. So I picked up the album and tried to demo it in the store, using the little headphone kiosk that they have there. For some reason, all of them were either broken or just were off. So I just randomly decided, I don't know why, I just decided to spend the $15 or whatever it was to buy the album, and if it wasn't that great, I'd just return it the next day. So when I started playing it in my car, I knew from the opening of the first track that I was going to love this record. The production was huge. The guitar melodies were beautiful for a metal record. The rough vocalist, his lows were just booming, and the clean vocals absolutely blew my mind. Jesse Cash, you have the voice of an angel, my friend. After listening to the entire record, I just loved it to death. It actually happened to be one of my favorite records of that year. So this current album of theirs had a lot to live up to for me, and actually did for a first for me, and pre-ordered a bundle of the record. So to say the least, my expectations are pretty high for Drift. So now let's talk about the new album. It's 10 tracks, and it's a bit of a lineup change going into this album. The previous rough vocalist, if that's what you'd call them, I'm not sure exactly what the term is for him, but it's now a guy now by the name of JT Chavy. This guy's delivery is more of a mid-range growl compared to the previous vocalist, who had a much lower register. I kind of prefer the lower register, but it doesn't detract much from the overall. It's just a preference. I know a lot of people probably prefer JT's over the previous vocalist. It's just a preference of mine, and I won't hate you for it. I feel as though this album takes a slightly less aggressive approach than Augment, just on almost all accounts actually. The production is dialed down, the punchiness of Augment just slightly, and it doesn't feel as loud or as angry. But it's not a non-aggressive album, it just dials it down a little, in my opinion. The album opener sets the tone perfectly for the rest of this album. Jesse's cleans dominate here on this track. In fact, Jesse's clean singing is utilized more often than throughout this album than anything else they've ever put out, which is not a bad thing in my opinion. I think Jesse's one of the strongest, most impressive clean vocalists in metalcore. This guy can reach some of the highest highs I've heard, and he makes it seem so effortless, and he even doesn't come across as whiny, which a lot of the higher register clean vocalists do in metalcore, unfortunately, in my opinion. And he's the backbone of the band for me. As long as he stays with Erra, they will remain a band that I will continue to watch out for. Also, the pacing of the tracks have slowed down a bit as well. I can't think of a single instance where a blast beat was a double, at least a double bass, or even a blast beat of any kind was utilized on this record, and any of the tracks. A few of these tracks even feel like, for a band like Erra, almost ballad-ish in their execution and their lyrical content. Um, Take songs like Orchid or the title track, which happens to be, well, actually, the title track Drift happens to be one of my favorite tracks on the album. In and in between those tracks, there's some definite crowd pleasers, though. Don't get me wrong. The second track, Irreversible, has an amazingly well done breakdown, if that's the term you want to use for it, which would definitely get the blood pumping in a live setting. And the closer, The Hypnotist, is probably one of Erra's best work to date. If you wanted to introduce a person who's never heard of Erra, either of those tracks, Irreversible or The Hypnotist, would be perfect for that. I'm not complaining about the softer edge, by the way. I'm not. I'm absolutely all for a band deviating and experimenting with their sound from album to album. In fact, I even encourage them to do so. It's just an observation of mine. Overall, I feel like it's a very solid album by one of the more unique acts in metalcore. I love that Jesse's vocals are being utilized more than ever on this record, and the slightly softer sonic approach and the smoother production courtesy of Nick Sampson give this record a more relaxing, ethereal listening experience than their previous outing. When comparing this to Augment, I have to give the edge to Augment, though. I preferred the more aggressive side to the songwriting and the thicker production of that album, and I did personally enjoy the album's rough, lower vocal delivery. I would give this record Drift an 8 out of 10, whereas I would give Augment probably a 9. Still one of the better listening experiences of this year for me, and I would definitely recommend this for any fans of metalcore, progressive music, Erra. You're going to love this record if you are a fan of those guys. And I'll still continue to anticipate whatever this band offers in the future. And I hope you like the video. Check in later for my next review. Deuces.